I lived paycheck to paycheck my entire life. My mom worked at fast food and we lived in Kentucky, and that was just a lifestyle that I always knew. In my adult life, I always lived at my means and not below my means. And this is why I'm so passionate about this topic, because if anyone should be living the American dream, I would argue that it should be veterans, specifically those who receive compensation. This is going to be one of my favorite videos of all time. So please like, subscribe, do all the things and watch the entire video, because that is the best thing that anyone can do to support the channel and the message. And here we go. We have Jay, who was a Navy EOD tech and now preaches financial freedom. Jay, go ahead and introduce yourself, and I'll ask you some questions to get this thing going.
Yeah, right on. Thanks, Clayton, for having me on the show. I appreciate it. Yeah, I did 13 years Navy EOD, and in the middle of that, I found myself really distracted by personal finance, and unfortunately, fortunately, it didn't actually get me or my team killed, but I had a couple close calls, and upon further reflection, realized I was so distracted by my personal financial nightmare that I made for myself, and then I started to realize that I wasn't alone. So I started to get smart on money, what it actually took to win with money. And now I started coaching. And I loved it, and saw that I was helping people. It was a need that was not being served, and I ran with it. So yeah, now I founded Golden Compass Financial Freedom, and I haven't looked back.
You know what's crazy is I did not know that about the story of how you got started, and I like how you correlated stress with performance, right? And obviously, in an EOD position, that your performance matters a lot, life or death for real. And but a lot of people don't understand that financial if you don't have financial freedom, that adds to stress. And we're speaking to the veteran population specifically. And so now think about, your 13 years in EOD, whatever mental health issues you have. Maybe you have sinusitis, rhinitis, some respiratory issues. Maybe your back hurts. You have musculoskeletal issues. And so you're stressed physically, but now you have this financial mental stress on top of that. And that's why I really wanted to bring you on the show to talk about that. And specifically, veterans, in my opinion, are in a very unique position outside of the rest of the American public, right? Because we do receive VA compensation. Now, we are talking to those who are still working full time. Obviously, if you're on TDIU, which is you're rated at 100%. I'm sorry, you're rated at 80%, but you're being paid at 100% because your disabilities prevent you from working. Obviously, you're not going to have the same opportunities as someone who is working full time. I did a video, Jay, a little bit earlier talking about veterans who are at least 50% or above and working full time can really, really plan their life out and have financial freedom, even if you have a 40, 50, 60, 70 grand per year salary. So, what are your thoughts on VA compensation specifically and financial freedom for veterans? Because I think we are in a very unique position.
Yeah, for sure, Clayton. And I would agree with the sentiment. It is a very unique position that we find ourselves in. And full disclosure, I'll just like we're talking to each other. We're all brothers and sisters here. If I'm 100% P and T, right? 100%. I still work. I'm still able to work, and your disability rating, right? That is you you earned it, right? For all intents and purposes. I mean, you put your life on the line, you sign your name on the dotted line, you answered the call more than once, no matter what that entailed, right? I was EOD, and I don't discredit anyone's service if they weren't EOD, right? That's not for everyone. I don't care if you're changing tires, whatever the case may be. Someone benefited from you being in that spot, and you did risk your life. We all know the crazy stories. Anything can happen at any point in time, and everyone's life is online. And that's what service members sign up to do every single day. So your rating, right, whatever you're receiving in VA disability compensation should be, I want it to be the cherry on top for your plan, right?
Yes.
For my scenario, I know I'm unique. There's no rubber stamp for any of this, right? I have my particular situation. I still work. So it's like, it's great because I have established a solid baseline for my finances and my family. Um, the compensation that comes in, we just funnel that to a whole separate account and just see how long it lasts as an experiment, right? And we can just do weird things with that money. It's not, I guess I want to address the pain of I need this check to come in. I really hope I can get this 100% rating. And if I don't, I'm going to be at a loss, right? I want you to get as much as you can, right? I'm not saying don't try to get as much as you can. Get as much as you absolutely can. You earn that, and it's your right. But I want you to be able to maximize and optimize your income or other income streams also, so that this can just go as far as humanly possible.
Yeah, something. I mean, we definitely advocate for veterans to be properly rated, right? Whether that's a 30% rating or a 100% rating or above 100%, which is like your special monthly compensation. You have like your amputees, your severe TBIs. Be properly rated. And correct me if I'm wrong, because you did say cherry on top, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. But to me, and I've said this before, I wish I would have listened to myself now when I was in my 20s, although I was probably a little stubborn and I wouldn't listen to myself anyways, right? But if I took one advice, it would be to live below my means. We talk about VA home loans a lot on this channel with David Piatek. We do live streams with him. He's a VA lender, also veteran, also still serving in the Guard, I believe. But we talk about not buying a home that you can afford, meaning I can afford $1 million home. If I buy $1 million home, that's my income limit. You are now paycheck to paycheck, or what we call house broke. And if I took advice from myself, it would be to live below your means. Say, hey, because the VA home loan is very, very loose, right? I know I can afford $1 million home, but maybe I buy a $600,000 home because then that allows me a window to do repairs, to pay for my car, to pretty much have a life outside of paycheck to paycheck. And I think VA compensation, if you do both, where you live below your means and you use VA compensation as a cherry on top, you're really going to allow yourself that window to have this disposable income. And I want to know your thoughts on that first before we dive into that. And then I also want to transition into, okay, well, now that we have disposable income, what do we do with it?
Yeah, for sure. And don't take it from me. I mean, Uncle Warren Buffett, he says, don't it's the goal is not to live within your means, it's to live well within your means. And I emulate
Nice.
that, because it's so right, where broke people ask, can I afford these payments? Wealthy people ask, can I afford this? Whatever that is, whether it's a house, vehicle, whatever the case may be. If you want to stay living paycheck to paycheck or house poor, just keep asking yourself, well, if can I afford this monthly payment, right? Then that's going to perpetuate the mentality is going to perpetuate you stay in paycheck to paycheck. Whereas if you're like, okay, I can afford this house because of X, Y, Z, not I can afford this payment, right? And that will put you well within your means. And um, every finance expert says you're for housing, don't allot more than 30% to your housing situation.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some ambiguity there. A lot of that is the ambiguity is 30% for your mortgage payment, right? Or your rent, whatever the case may be. We'll go with like home buying. So your mortgage payment. I say strive for 25% at the most, right? If you're going to max it, 25% at the most, because I want you to be all in utilities, everything, mortgage at 30% at the most. So if your mortgage is pushing you at that 30% boundary, your utility is going to push you right over the edge. And as we are talking to, the veterans out here, we can go to a real dark place. And I might go there just for a second, just to kind of hammer down why this is so important to me. Because you are dealing with XYZ, whatever the case may be. I mean, you listed off a ton of just symptoms that a lot of people have, Clayton. And so you're dealing with those, right? You're dealing with XYZ, you got out. So you're dealing with a transition. all that lifestyle, whatever your family situation is, you're dealing with that. You're dealing with how you're feeling mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever the case, spiritually, even. And now we have to be brilliant at the basics, especially with these huge changes in our lives, where using a written budget can save your life. And I'll explain that right here by saying we are dealing with all these things, right? We're dealing with all these things, mortgage payment, all these percentages, whatever the case may be. And now, if you're not using a written budget, it's very easy for things to slip through the cracks, right? A lot of us in the military did our jobs with checklists. You didn't do anything. You didn't start a vehicle without a checklist, right? There was like, okay, you do all these steps in order, and it's like that for a reason. So you're applying that same thing for your money, because now if I know exactly where all my money is going, I know all the bills that I have, I know exactly how much they are, I know when they're going to be coming out, I know exactly how I'm going to allocate the money. Now I'm not sitting in my house dealing with all my stuff, and then the lights get turned off because maybe I have the money, but I'm just not, I have so much going on that just gets missed. And now for this 22 a day, like ridiculous statistic that who knows what it might be a little bit higher from what people are saying. How many of those are that situation where they're dealing with all this stuff and then something trivial happens, something avoidable happens, and they're like, you know what? Screw it. That's all the justification I needed, and now I'm over it. I'm over the whole thing, and that's all I needed to justify ending this nightmare, right?
Yeah.
When we can use a written budget to just have these things on paper, so you know what you're facing, and it's not going to surprise you, right? And that is what keeps me up at night still, just thinking about all of those 22 a day. How many are in this situation where it's not crazy? It's not like a house is being foreclosed on or a car is being repossessed. It's just something small slipped through the cracks, and they're like, screw it.
Oh yeah, especially in the GWAT generation, we see mental health, and I believe it's in the top 4 claims. It's number 4 of the GWAT generation, and one of the main symptoms of mental health for veterans specifically is the inability to accomplish day-to-day tasks like paying your bills, right? And so I'm definitely down to have that written style budget. But let's go ahead and hop on this little scenario here, and then I want you to give your advice, and then plug whatever it is you want to plug. Let's say you have a veteran who has $10,000 in credit card debt. They have a $30,000 car loan. They are working full time, and they receive VA compensation, right? Let's just call it $1,000 for VA compensation. It could be much more than that if they're 100%. It could be much less than that, okay? But I think $1,000 on top of working full time, and of course they have a house, and let's just say they're married with 1 kid. And so we have this scenario where the veteran does have debt, they're working full time, and they have VA compensation. How is that veteran, month to month allocating funds to, one, get out of debt, and then actually have financial freedom? And I love how you mentioned, live well within your means. Because a $50,000 job a year, that sucks, to be honest with you, depending on where you live. But now you have VA compensation in addition to that. That could be a game changer.
For sure. So we're saying in this scenario, this vet has a $50,000 a year job.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, depending on where you live, 50,000 is not a lot. That's right around the median income, and we can look that up real quick if you want. I don't know off the top of my head right now because it's been changing recently. So with this amount, right, he's 40K in debt all up, credit cards and the car note, and he's making 12,000 a year VA compensation on top of his $50,000 a year job. And is that, so if that's gross, right, we can just factor a quick, just for taxes, if he is in a taxable state where his income taxes or whatever the case may be with his disability, he's still paying income taxes and stuff like that. We're just going to round up and just take away 25% for taxes. So 50,000 times we'll do. So after taxes, he's got 42,500, right? 42,500 plus the 12,000 that is tax-free, right? VA compensation is not taxable income. So we're looking at 52.5 all up, take home pay. So with that, it's not too bad, right? This is not the worst situation I've ever seen. He has a child, so there's extra costs associated with that. But even that, right? Even with kids, right? I have 3 kids myself. I know they're expensive. I know groceries, like we
Mhm.
eat eggs and milk like we're on an NFL football team. But there are ways to still maximize your income with these life things, right? You have children, that's now a priority, like for better or for worse. That is how that goes. So prioritize the debts, right? So you have a car note, which is a secured loan, right? They can just come and take your car back if you don't pay. Credit card debt is unsecured debt. No, if you don't pay it, there's nothing they can do. They can't come and take the steak dinner that you ate last night that you put on your credit card, right?
Yeah.
That is an unsecured debt. So we need to make sure we don't fall behind on this car note. That takes priority, right? So we're getting that paid first. Because again, they can come take your car and your kids got to go to school. Maybe you have to go to work, you have a job, right? All these things. Transportation is one of the 4 walls for living. And I'll just hit those real quick. The 4 walls are the actual necessities, depending, no matter what anyone thinks, right? These are actual necessities because if you don't have these are like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Food
Mhm.
is number 1. If you don't eat, you will die. So there's really no argument there. Number 2 is your housing, right? You have to make sure you have a roof over your head for your own safety and security. Again, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you feel safe, you will have a better life. Number 3 is your transportation, right? Transportation, because you have to get to and from work. You have to get to and from doctor's appointments. If you have children, they need to go to school. They need to get them to the hospital. God forbid anything happens. But hey, if you have kids, you're going to go to the ER at some point in time. So on and so forth, right? So transportation is very important. And then the 4th one is communication, especially in this day and age. I like to say it's communication. Um, there's some talks like it could be clothing, and that is professional clothing if you need specific clothes for work. But communication right now, I think, is way more important because you can pretty much get away with stuff and you can find clothes pretty cheap. But if you do not have phone internet, you will not have a job, period.
Mhm.
So those are the 4 walls of living. And with kids, there are some very close runner-ups like life insurance if you have people that are financially dependent on you, if you want to have if you need supplemental coverage outside of whatever benefit you have. Childcare costs are next up, and health insurance if you're not wanting to subject your family to the VA or anything that is
Yeah.
socialized in nature, which is your call, right? Again, there's no rubber stamp for everyone. This is really what works best for you and your family is what is most important. So with that being said, got to get this car note, at least get the monthly payment squared away, make sure that is in there and you write that in your budget, right? Payment X amount, whatever that may be. And then for the credit card debt, it's 10,000 in credit card debt, whatever those are, list them out, smallest to largest. There are a couple different methods for paying off debt strategies, as in the snowball method or the avalanche. We can get more into depth than that, but for simplicity's sake, I would recommend the snowball. It's because we're not math equations. If we were math equations, we wouldn't do anything wrong because numbers don't lie. It's very easy.
Yeah.
We're human beings. We make mistakes. So there's that, right? The avalanche method, I will not argue, is definitely the cheapest way to pay off your debt if you actually follow it all the way through the first time, which 95% of the time does not happen. So the snowball method, what you do is you list out your debt smallest to largest balance, and you pay off all the, like you have, make sure all the minimums are covered. So let's just say this $10,000 in credit card debt is listed into 5 different debts, right? 5 different cards. List them out, smallest balance to largest balance, pay all the minimums. You start that smallest balance, you pay, you have all the minimums lined out. And with your written budget, you see the amount you have left over at the end of the month. You put all that extra towards that smallest debt. Now
Mhm.
that gets knocked out. You take that minimum, the minimum payment for that card, dump it onto the next one, add it to that extra in your budget, and you just go on and snowball. So as you go down, that payment gets larger and larger, and it's easier to knock down this debt. You feel a win, it feels good, you feel motivated. You're more likely to finish the snowball method the first time versus the avalanche method, which you might lose steam because you can't feel a win, and just people don't stick with it.
Yeah, something to add there too, and I want to throw in VA compensation. Now, I am a fan of putting all of your compensation towards debt personally, and that assumes your full-time income is paycheck to paycheck, right? So VA disability is that disposable income for debt. I'm a fan of that. However, I could see how that would be difficult for some, and so even if half of your disability payment, and right now we're only using $1,000 for numbers' sake because it's easy. But if you're at 90%, that's about 2,400. Half of that is 1,200 that you could start your snowball method plus 20 or plus 1,200, right? So if your minimum payment is $115, you take half of your compensation. Let's say it's 1,200. You could easily be paying, 1325, whatever that math. I'm not going to do math publicly. I guess I just did and got it wrong. Whatever. But you can start. You can use your compensation for that snowball method, which is why I really think veterans are in a unique spot, because your average American doesn't have that. I'm going to use the word privilege, because VA compensation by far is a privilege, right? Ukrainians don't have a Department of Veteran Affairs for Ukraine, right? There's not a Department of Veteran Affairs for name your country. It's just the United States. So food for thought.
Hey, I'm a firm believer that we hit the lottery being born in America.
Yeah.
For sure. And yeah, if we can, I love that. If I recommend paying off debt fast and furious, right? If you are in this amount of debt, I would say have a beginner emergency fund to give yourself a little bit of distance so you're not going back into debt. If your tire blows out or whatever the case may be, it just puts you that much further away from reaching for the credit card to pay it off.
Mm-hmm.
You can just give yourself a little cushion. And it's a beginner emergency fund, like $1,000, $2,000 at the absolute most. But yeah, really that $1,000, because it's not supposed to feel good, right? It's supposed to make you feel uncomfortable, actually, that starter emergency fund, because you want 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up for a legit emergency fund. So this $1,000 is just a little cushion, not really meant to make you feel safe. Because now, if you don't feel safe, you should be paying this off fast and furious to get there. And with this $1,000 compensation, I mean, $10,000 of credit card debt. If you put $1,000 on that, mathematically, you will be done in 10 months with your credit card debt, right? Less than a year, you can knock this out. I know a lot of people probably look at this number like, man, it's going to take me, a couple of years or whatever, based on these minimums, my interest rate, whatever. It's like, no, we're going to hammer this down fast and furious. We're going to pay a lot to the principal after that minimum is satisfied. And we're going to eradicate this out of our lives. I was EOD, so I like to say detonate debt. But yeah, that's what you're going to do. You're going to put the C4 in it and you're going to blow it up, and it's going to go high order. When things go high order, everything is consumed, period, right? It is gone. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. That's what I like to do. That's what I want you to do. And then the 30K, the car note, you take all that stuff. Like, let's say we do this, 10 months goes by, your credit card debt's gone. So now you have another, that $1,000 plus all the extra that you've been carving out of your budget, because you're feeling all these wins. You're feeling the momentum. You're like, damn, this feels good. I don't have any credit card debt, and I have all this extra money that I can pay my bills. So now you take that huge amount, start dumping it on your car above the minimum payment. You're paying the principal balance on your car. If you want to keep it, we can even go scorched earth here and sell this thing and get a beater if you want to go really fast. But let's just say you're going to keep this $30,000 car. That's, all things, if we can't find anything else in your budget and we're only using that compensation, 30 months, right? 30 months. And it's less than that because you're paying your monthly.
Yeah, you still have the minimum. Yeah.
So yeah, at a maximum, right? If you kind of skip a couple things, it's going to be 30 months, which is insane to me that they have like 80-month car notes now. It blows my mind, right? And you shouldn't, in my opinion, right? My professional opinion, my advice that I say, you should never invest this much money in a depreciating asset. And this meets that, because for cars, anything with motors and wheels, right, it should not total more than 50% of your income. And this car does, right? That now you're car poor instead of house poor. So now that means the house that you wanted, you can't afford because you're living in your car. Too much of your money is tied up in this depreciating asset, meaning it's going down in value. And I know there are some people out there that invest in like Ferraris and stuff like that. That's not what we're talking about here. Okay, we're talking about everyday people.
Yeah, and right now we're using 50 grand in this like
Yeah.
made up scenario. This also applies if you do have that $1 million home and you have 2 Porsches out front, you can still be paycheck to paycheck. You
People
might
are.
drive in a nicer car, but deep down inside you're freaking out because you're living paycheck to paycheck and you're struggling. So although there might be a huge vast gap in the value of your home and car, paycheck to paycheck is paycheck to paycheck. Doesn't matter how you slice that cake, right?
You
So
hit the nail right on the
we're
head.
using small numbers for math's sake, but this also applies to those who look rich, right?
Yes. And you hit the nail on the head, Clayton. It's, living paycheck to paycheck is not a income problem. It's a behavior problem.
Yes.
I talk to physicians that are in the same exact boat as this scenario right here. They just do the same thing with more zeros at the end of it. But the mentality, the behavior, the stress, the anxiety is all the same. I know physicians that are making well into the 6 figures that want to go part-time to spend more time with their kids, but they can't, right? Quote unquote, they can't because of how they set themselves up financially. It's not in the cards for them, right? They need to do some steps to get there. They can, and they should be able to. And it's not an income problem. It's a behavior problem. So yeah, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head.
The last thing I want to talk about is and this one is definitely opinion based. I'm going to give my opinions, and I if you have an argument to disagree, I would really want you to disagree with that, or at least create the argument to. I'm a fan. Let's just say you have no credit card debt, you have no car debt because you use a snowball method. Now we're at this place where we can either invest that money, and that gets a little shady as well because there's scams everywhere. Or you can pay off your house, and there's variations of both. I am a fan, and I'm saying this as a guy who's in his basement right now on YouTube. Okay, so I have no financial literacy outside of just what I've done. I am a fan of making extra payments, double personally per month on your mortgage, just because for my understanding, you're paying yourself, right? And so if we were to sell the house, now we have this equity. You're able to transfer that if you're using the VA home loan specifically for veterans, right? You are it's just imagine a life of being completely debt free and 95% of your income is actually disposable. And now all the bills you have are like car insurance, your phone bill, utilities, and maybe some property tax, depending on what state or what rating you're in. That would be an insane, that's the dream, right? I'm a fan of paying off your house. I want to know your thoughts on when it comes to investment for veterans specifically on their VA compensation, or paying off your house, or a variation of. What are your thoughts?
Sure. I'm kind of a hybrid approach. And it's really, again, there's no rubber stamp for this. It's really your risk tolerance and what your goals are. So I love the idea of paying off the house, right? When you owe no money to no one, I mean, you significantly reduce your living expenses, and that is freedom right there. And that will alleviate. Imagine if you didn't have a mortgage payment, the income that you would need to live on, right? It would be significantly less than what you actually need. So there's that aspect, and I love that. I'm a huge proponent of paying down the house early, but also you want to set yourself up in the future, right? So you have to invest some. And so once you're out of debt, you have a fully funded emergency fund. And these are my requirements, right? I have go, no go criteria, right? I'm talking to veterans. Yeah. Everyone knows there's go, no go criteria. No go criteria for investing and paying off your house or paying extra on your house is having no emergency fund and being in debt, right? Those are no go criteria, right? Because you can invest money, but guess what? If your car gets repossessed, you have no car. If you 100% of foreclosures happen on houses with mortgages, period. I mean, if you have a mortgage, you are at risk of foreclosure. So when we eradicate these things out of our lives, it just makes that much, you're just taking that off your plate. So you have to be set up first though, right? You cannot be in debt. You cannot, you need an emergency fund. You can't be in debt. Now that we have those things, and an emergency fund is 3 to 6 months of your expenses. And how do you know what your actual expenses are? With the written budget. We just did it. The 4 walls times 3 or 6, right? Whatever your risk tolerance is. Some people are natural savers. Some people are natural spenders. Maybe they want the 3-month emergency fund so they have more to spend. Some people are like natural savers and like, I need a year. But that's just a lot of money tied up in a savings account that's not really working for you. So aim for that 3 to 6 window. It's not permanent, but that's what you want to get before you turn on investing for retirement and paying off your house and funding your kids' college if that's your priority, right? So when you do those things, like when you have your no debt and you have that emergency fund socked away, now think about turning on retirement investing at 15% of your income, right? So now you have a little bit going into your retirement house or retirement accounts, and then you still have money to pay extra principal on your mortgage payment. On your mortgage balance. So you're kind of doing the investment, saving for retirement, paying off the house. And then outside of that, then you can toss a little bit in like a 529 or whatever the case may be, whatever investment vehicle you want for kids' college, if that's a priority for you. So you're doing those steps, essentially 4, 5, 6, because 1 is saving the $1,000, 2 is paying off your debt, 3 is the emergency fund, 4 is turning that retirement on. And you can do 1, 2, 3 or one at a time, like Fast and Furious. Hit those as quick as humanly possible. Scorched earth, get those knocked out. 4, 5, 6, take a breather, right? Before you even go on step 4, I always say, especially if you have a family, take a breath.
Yeah.
That huge amount that you just paid, like snowballed all your debt, use that amount and go away for a weekend. I guarantee you're going to have the most fun on a family vacation with that amount of money without going deeper into debt, without any debt than you ever have had, period, because you have this sense of freedom and it's guilt-free spending at that point. So that's like my little break in the middle. Do that. Celebrate this win. You just set yourself up with a rock solid foundation. Now, 4, 5, 6, investing in retirement, paying off the house, and saving for kids' college, you can do those all at the same time, right?
Oh yeah.
And now, if you want, like, let's say Clayton, let's say you really want the house paid off, right? So you have that 15% in, like going into your retirement accounts, and then anything extra, you're like, I'm hammering down the mortgage. We're not going out to restaurants. We're not doing any of that. We're doing the debt snowball kind of mentality in our house now. And by all means, if that's your priority, go for it. I support that 100%. If you want to chill for a little bit and you're like, maybe I just want to, like, pay off a little extra, maybe like $500, and I'll use that other 500 of my compensation to, maybe I just paid off that car, but it's kind of getting old. Maybe I'll just sock that away for a new car fund, right? Something like that. Make a sinking fund. And sinking funds are just different things that will come up in life that are coming, like newsflash, right? Christmas is December 25th every year.
Yeah.
It's not a surprise. That will happen every single year on that day. So you can put, like, maybe, okay, cool. It's September right now. We're nearing the end of September. Maybe I just put $500 a month away for October, November. I'll get $1,000 for Christmas. Boom. That's my Christmas fund. Now I'm not going to be racking up more credit card debt for January, February. So now I'm paying Christmas presents off that I gave away into March, right?
Yeah.
Or later. So stuff like that, right? And I'm all for it. If you want, just make sure you have that 15% at least going into your retirement accounts. And then, whatever really makes sense for you and your family, what your goals are, put that to your principal. I mean, even $500 on extra towards the principal. It's not an extra mortgage payment. You're paying your mortgage and then you're applying this to the principal. You are saving yourself $500 a month with this VA compensation. That is hundreds of thousands of dollars saved in interest, regardless. Even if you have a 3% rate, like from during COVID or whatever the case may be, you're still going to save yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars by paying your principal off little by a little extra every month. So yeah, if you can match your mortgage payment and put that, like you pay your mortgage and then you have that same amount and you want to put that to the principal, that's dumping gas on the fire. We're detonating debt again.
Yeah,
And
I
I'm
love
all for it.
detonating debt. Yeah, the that's hilarious because you're EOD, right? It's the pun. All right.
Gotta do
When
it.
when I explain it, it gets funnier, right? No,
Exactly.
I like how you mentioned, after you're out of debt, you can go on vacation. It's important not to use credit cards for that vacation because then you're right back in debt. And I also like how you mentioned, maybe you want to buy a new car. That is what being debt free, minus the house. That's what being debt free does. It's like, hey, I have this 2005 car. Maybe I'm a car guy, right? And now that I'm out of debt, I can now, it's way easier to save. You can snowball your savings account, put some aside, and then go buy a new car in cash. Not get a car note, not pay another financial institution money on, you're buying a car worth 10 grand, but you're paying 25 grand for it. That's just insane to me.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. When you get a car loan, that's what you do. And that's a cheap car. It's much, much higher for a really nice car, but being debt free allows you that, we're using the, financial freedom. I would probably say the word power. It gives the buyer power where it's like, hey, that car that's 39 grand, if I finance it, it would be 48, 49, maybe 50. I'm just going to buy it straight out for 38. Why? Because I can, right?
Yeah.
That's why. And that's what being debt free means. So, last parting words, Jay, how can veterans get a hold of you? It'll all be down below in the description, but talk about yourself here.
Yeah, no, happy to. Yeah, that freedom, it's just there's no I implore you to just define what freedom means to you, right?
Hmm.
Define what freedom means to you. It's different for everyone, but when you achieve it, the feeling is the same across the board. Like we all feel the same way when we achieve our definition of freedom. And my definition of freedom and what I built my company on is doing the things you love with the people you love when you want to as often as you want. And if you're not doing that, you are a slave to someone or something, and we got to find those things and get them out of our lives. So yeah, for more of that, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search for Jay Lee and my beautiful face will be right there. And then yeah, shoot me an email, jay@goldencompassllc.com. I'd be happy to get in touch with you. And then we'll have a link down below. If you just want to hop right in, I have a Millionaire Blueprint program that will walk you through everything that we just talked about in depth with an accountability partner being me or someone on my team. And we will get you to that freedom that you define sooner than you think. And you
All
can
right.
do it. It's easy,
Thank,
easier than you think.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming on the show. And I am a huge fan of veterans living the American dream, right? There's no better person than a veteran to live the American dream. So I definitely appreciate your time and everything you do for the community.
Absolutely. Thank you. Same to you, Clayton. Appreciate it.